Tonight on The Roast, the Coalition promises to stop free legal advice for asylum seekers and the Labor Party launches its campaign. But first, this election finally comes to an end on Saturday, so to kick off the final week of campaigning, Mark Humphries wants to not break eye contact with you.
Just 1 week out from the election and the Labor Party has decided it might be worth actually launching its campaign. Anthony Albanese opened up proceedings.
It is great to be here.
No, it's not.
Today's also Father's Day. So I begin with a big shout out to all the fathers in the audience and at home.
Yes, happy Father's Day. I bought you this. It's a shirt. It says, "Get to the point, Anthony." What do you have to say about your leader?
Is Kevin Rudd a bit of a nerd? You bet. Would I pick him in a rugby team or in a boxing match ahead of Tony Abbott? No way.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. He's been wearing the tracksuit and everything. Come on, Albo, sell Rudd to the people.
If you want a bloke who can jump through tyres, vote for Tony Abbott.
Somebody get this guy off the stage before he votes for Tony Abbott. Who else have they got? How about someone who's seen Rudd naked?
I'm here today to introduce a man who carries his country boy smile everywhere with him.
That's the spirit. Let's take a look at Smiley Cyrus. It's almost like we deliberately chose the worst possible clip. All right, Robert Frowney Jr., what do you got to say?
And for those who say the fight is up, I say you haven't seen anything yet.
There's only 1 week left till the election. Your only hope now is that we see definitive proof that Tony Abbott eats boat people.
I believe in this election we can prevail and we will prevail.
And R. Kelly believes he can fly. But it's been 17 years since the release of Space Jam. I'm starting to think it's not going to happen. But according to the Channel 7 Worm, the Prime Minister's speech was effective. At the beginning of the speech, the Worm showed 37% approval, but by the end it had shot up to 68%. If only worms could vote. And Tony Abbott has come under fire for simplifying the Syrian crisis on ABC's Insiders program.
It's not goodies versus baddies, it's baddies versus baddies.
And just as well, because I think the Assad regime would make light work of the goodies, Labor Senator Penny Wong pounced on the quote.
Can you imagine him at the G20? Well, Barack, I don't think we should do this because, you know, it's baddies versus baddies.
Yeah, Penny, that's exactly how he'd phrase it to the president. By your logic, he'll turn up in budgie smugglers, punch a wall and say Obama has sex appeal. Grow up, Penny. Good thing Abbott's allies were there to defend his comment.
I think it's actually extremely sophisticated.
Whoa, steady on. He said it was baddies versus baddies. It wasn't the Gettysburg Address. And speaking of simplistic, the Sunday Telegraph, providing all the bias of the Daily Telegraph but on a Sunday, went with this headline yesterday: Australia needs Tony. The ABC's Mark Simpkin, however, made up his own headline.
A full-page, front-page screaming headline, "We want Tony," and the photo leaves you in no doubt they're not talking about Tony Barber or Tony Soprano.
Tony Barber? I wish. Though if that were the case, I'd have to take the Telegraph to task for their bias against baby John Burgess. And finally, Tony Abbott has announced he will hold out revealing the details of the Coalition's policy costings until Thursday. Coincidentally, the major parties can't release any new ads after Wednesday. So if Labor finds fault in Abbott's costings, they'll have to keep it to themselves. So Tony, in the words of a canine cleaning company, you dirty dog. For The Roast, I'm Mark Humphries.
Thank you, Mark. Now, for more coverage on the Labor Party election launch, we sent our own Clark Richards along because he'd had such a good time at all the other launches, namely the Liberal Party launch.
And we'll build the roads of the 21st century.
The Palmer United launch.
Clive.
And the Greens launch.
It's a rave! It wasn't a rave.
Clark Richards, how'd you find the Labor launch?
Tom, it was amazing. It was a veritable who's who, all seated around the set from John Edwards crossing over. Let's take a look. I'm a little bit late, but we're clapping for Hawking.
Stand up. Bob worked with a fella. The nation's greatest treasurer.
Hawk worked with Chris Bowen. Oh, Keating. You meant Keating. He's not talking about you, Bowen. Shh. You shh.
Whatever you say about John Howard, he was a man of intellect.
Why is he talking about the actor from Sea Change?
Who had a vision for his country.
Oh, I think he means Howard, the Prime Minister.
Not my vision, but a vision nonetheless.
Does Albo know that Howard was a Liberal? Shh! Shush yourself!
Excuse me, I'm going to the bathroom.
Yeah, I'm going too, I'm bored.
All governments combined from Federation right up to 2000.
Oh, right Instagram from backstage. There's no one in here. God, it's a picture of his watch. He said, "Hurry up, Albo." Yeah, your Prime Minister wants you to stop warmly introducing him. Oh, I think Rudd's on. Rudd's on, go! Don't shake the Prime Minister's hands with toilet fingers.
Who will never forget.
Oh,
sleeping
crap,
in the
it's
car
Therese.
that night.
Keep it short, lady.
I'm here today to introduce someone who grew up on a dairy farm.
She's not going to keep it short.
Tiny
Well,
Queensland
time for a kip.
town. I want to introduce a husband who, when sent to Bunnings for a mozzie candle, one mozzie candle, comes back with Roman flares, blue tack, an extension cord, potting mix, a step ladder, secateurs, but no mozzie candle.
Wait a minute. Roman flares, potty mix, blue tack.
To introduce my best
Oh my
friend.
Jesus, he's making a bomb! He's making a bomb! He's making a bomb! Oh, it was just an anecdote to humanise. It was just an anecdote to humanise him. Calm down, everybody.
Fellow Queenslanders, fellow Australians, fellow members of the great Australian Labor Party.
Oh, a pretty warm crowd thanks to Albo, you impatient dairy farmer.
A future for the many, not just for the few. That's what Labor governments do.
Hey, lady, look interested. You're on television. Don't make me go. Oh.
And we wanted to... I announced today that a re-elected Labor government will require that state governments maintain and grow their funding of TAFE. Second, if those conditions are not met by 1 July 2014, we will move to provide Commonwealth funding directly to individual TAFE colleges.
Oh, the people love that. Maybe you shouldn't have saved it for 6 days before the election. Is that Michael Caton? Michael! They put animal parts in you.
Bravo. Oh boy, that was some speech.
I'm talking to hot property. I knew carrying this DVD everywhere would pay off. He couldn't avoid me forever.
True. Thank you, Clark. Well, finally tonight, with just 1 week left until Election Day, the Coalition has delivered the last point in its fabled 6-point plan to stop the boats. A plan described by Labor as mad, by the Greens as
really cruel policy,
and by James Diaz as So when it comes to the final instalment in this eagerly anticipated franchise, Asylum Seeker 6, The Demoralising, how does it all end?
The federal opposition is promising to stop funding immigration advice for asylum seekers if it wins next week's election.
By having the opposition promise to not help people who have already made it to Australia.
Oh my God, I'm on fire, Tom, help me!
Nope, and you have my word on that. Specifically, the Coalition plan would scrap the right to free legal advice for asylum seekers. But as opposition immigration spokesperson Scott Morrison explained,
people can still make the claims, obviously, and if others in the community or others want to provide that advice free of charge or they want to pay for that advice, then obviously that can continue.
Asylum seekers can still have a lawyer, they just have to pay for it themselves with all that money they have, or find lawyers who'll volunteer to do it for free. The other option is to just represent themselves in court, and as someone who is a citizen and even speaks the language, I can tell you it's not as hard as it sounds.
Crown Prosecutor.
Thank you, Your Honour. Per the dictum res ipsa loquitur, this affidavit served ex officio by the department is condicio sine qua non.
I think I'm winning.
So whilst asylum seekers can still have legal advice, what matters is Australians won't have to pay for it anymore.
We won't be stopping access to advice, but the taxpayer will no longer be on the hook for it.
And thank God, because I am sick of all the money this is costing me. And that's why this plan is so great, because it'll save about $100 million over 4 years. And with a population of 23 million people, that means we're each currently on the hook for about $1.08 a year. It's a very small hook, the kind of hook you'd see on an adorable mouse pirate. In the end, the Coalition's plan would mean we each save around $4 over 4 years by denying asylum seekers the right to free legal advice, or approximately 1 cappuccino sipped very slowly from now until 2017. So, if it's all the same, Coalition, I might just give you $5 from me now to not do this. Would that be cool? In the meantime, for more on how the asylum seeker policies got to this point, we're joined in the studio by Nick Richardson and his television.
Thank you, Tom. Well, it all started in May 2013. It was a simpler time when the only people who knew what Manus Island was were people imprisoned there. And Parliament voted to excise mainland Australia from the migration zone, on the assumption that asylum seekers, of course, were navigating the oceans using policy documents and not maps. Then there was this thing, published in Australian newspapers, which at least stopped me from smuggling people into the country. Which brings us to August, when Rudd announced the election, and the Coalition joined Labor in trying to find increasingly worse ways to handle the problem, including a boat buyback scheme, which might not work unless you intended to purchase all 750,000 fishing boats in Indonesia, a retroactive policy designed to clear the backlog of asylum seekers who've already made it to Australia despite the country not legally existing anymore, and now a policy that deprives asylum seekers of legal representation unless they can pay for it themselves, assuming they haven't blown all their money on their fancy overseas cruise. And that's where the two parties stand on asylum seekers.
Yeah, wow, that is the most depressing cartoon I've ever seen.
Yes, well, I would have used the happy asylum seeker graphics guy, but we had to let him go 5 months ago.
What? Happy asylum seeker graphics guy Jeff?
Yes, happy asylum seeker graphics guy Jeff.
Oh, well, if you're watching Happy Asylum Seeker graphics guy Jeff, good night.
Good night.
Tell you what, he's never going to find work making Happy Asylum Seeker graphics again.
Nope, never. Never, ever, 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 ever.